Okay, I just yesterday I finished Bates Motel, the series, and I had kind of watched it, periodically, like my friend was watching it, and I would catch some of the episodes, and I immediately was, like, drawn to Dylan, because he's hot, but also because he always did the right thing, or tried to. I mean, like Norma said, he's always, well, I don't even think that was actually Norma, but it was the other Norma, Norma. But, she said he always has good intentions, and he did, and oh my gosh. But, and I got into more of the Dylan and Emma thing, and I was like, I'm just into Dylan and Emma. But then, like, you know, she stopped watching it, so I got bored one day. I was like, I'm gonna finish, like, season 4 out, because that was all that was on Netflix at the time. And, because I didn't have anything else to watch. I'm like, well, I'm gonna finish this out. And I got really into it, and I'm like, holy crap. And I saw the ending of season 4, and I was like, oh my gosh, which I love all Alfred Hitchcock, movies and stuff. I have, a slight obsession, but, I'm totally into Hitchcock anyway, but I have never seen the original Psycho. I just never was that into it. I like the birds, I like his, Rear Window is, like, definitely one of my favorite, anything Hitchcockian, but, like, even stuff that's like Hitchcock, I like that kind of stuff. I love old movies. To Catch a Thief is one of the best ones, because it's not so much about horror, which Hitchcockian movies are not that they're not that scary. They're more of, like, weird, like, it's not so much that they're very scary. Psycho is probably one of the more scary ones, but it's not even that scary, especially now that I've watched Bates Motel. But, I'm not saying I was on Norman's side or that I liked him. He always seemed kind of creepy. But at the same time, seeing that scene where he, like, what really drew me in, and, like, this is, because the whole time I'm like, this is freaking creepy, because I wasn't paying that, like, much attention, and I'm like, are him and his mom, like, incest with each other? Like, really? Like, because I wasn't paying that much attention, and I'm like, I was only, like, whenever I heard Dylan talk or Emma talk, I'd be like, okay, now I'm watching it. But, I was into their whole thing. Like, I love them. They're angels, and they're perfect, but, and I still think that, but, I was really rooting for them, and, like, they were my favorite characters, especially Dylan, it was because he was, like, complicated, and, but also, he had to deal with them, and Norma was a little crazy, but she wasn't crazy like Norman. Like, she never just had a desire to kill people. Like, the one guy she killed, he was taunting her right after he raped her, which is, like, in any court, I can't see a judge being like, it wasn't premeditated. He was taunting her right directly after raping her, and it's like, that's hard on someone's psyche. A normal person would want to stab him, like, and she was, she's been through a lot, so the fact that she was as healthy mentally as she was compared to what she went through her whole life, she had a pretty strong mind, but, because, I mean, her brother raped her for years, and she got pregnant by her brother, so anybody would be a little twisted after that, She was twisted environmentally, not biologically, is basically what I'm trying to say. And she was pretty strong, even, despite all that. Mentally strong. But, I mean, I'm not saying that, like, mental illness is a weakness at all, either. And the part that really stuck out to me when I was watching it, like, finishing up season 4, and I hadn't really paid attention to the ones before, was after Norman got put into Pineview, and, they got out. He escaped with, I'm forgetting his name right now. And, they went to the strip club, and he thought, oh no, I might have killed that stripper girl. And finally, he found out she was okay, and he was sitting in the car, and the doctor, Edwards, who's like, oh my gosh, I wish he was a real therapist, because I would so go to him. He's so cool. He's a really good guy. I'm like, dude, I wish he was real. He seems so nice. But anyway, so Norman's sitting in the car, and he's, like, really upset because he knows there's something wrong with him, and he's like, and he starts crying, and he's like, please help me, and like saying that. And I was sitting there bawling my eyes out because I feel sorry for Norman Bates. And like, I never in my wildest dreams thought that, like, and the writers, I found out that Carlton Cuse is the creator of the show, and he also created Lost. And I'm like, yeah, or was like one of the main writers or something like that. He worked on Lost. I'm like, oh, so yeah, obviously he's amazing, because no wonder the show is so good, because Lost is awesome. And diving into the characters, like the humanity of a well-known serial killer, which I always had a problem with the movie Psycho being called Psycho, and people being like, Norman Bates is a psychopath. I'm like, Norman Bates, even in the movie Psycho, was not a psychopath, which psycho can be short for psychosis or psychotic or psychology. It's short for a lot of things, but mostly people think of psycho as being short for psychopath. And Norman Bates was not a psychopath. Even in the movie Psycho, he wasn't a psychopath. He didn't want to kill Marion. Not his, Norman personality didn't want to kill anybody. The Norma personality, the mother personality of Norman Bates, his alter, wanted to kill people, and it wasn't entirely his fault, so it was like, even in the movie, he had dissociative identity disorder, and it's like, when he first started going to therapy in Bates Motel, I was like, please don't call him a psychopath, because that would be wrong, inaccurate, and, when he said dissociative identity disorder, and that therapist was so freaking smart. He's like, so how do you feel about Norman? I'm like, oh yeah, you're so freaking smart. Like, I was so, like, I love that therapist, but he was so freaking smart. But like, when he said dissociative identity disorder, I was like, yes, thank you, because I wanted to say that, like, just even thinking about, like I said, I never watched the original Psycho. I watched the remake with, like, Anne Heche, which was, ugh. But I don't like her. But so I'm like, yeah, Norman Bates was not a psychopath. But anyway, I mean, back in that day, they didn't, we're in this day and age, we need to stop thinking that everybody that's crazy is a psychopath, because that's not the case. And also that even psychopaths are hardly ever violent. So, which there's something, it's just, yeah, they don't have any empathy, which is like, wow, but Norman obviously does, and we see that especially in Bates Motel. I love that they went through the whole thing and, like, showed how he got to where he was. Like, the first kill he had, which was his dad, I'm not even gonna, even if he was in his right mind and hit him with a blender while he was beating his mom, even if he hadn't gone out of his mind, I'd still be like, okay, cool. Like, not cool, but like, dude, for one thing, he just hit him with the blender. He didn't intentionally kill him. He was just like, I'm hitting you in the head with the blender because you're beating my mom. It's like, that's understandable even for a sane person, who didn't black out. I would be cool with it. I mean, I wouldn't want him to go to jail for it. I'd be like, you're defending another person. And the fact that Norma even, like, which I don't think she hid it from Norman or faked it just because she didn't want him to get in trouble with the law, because obviously that was defense. It was not, it was defending her, so, he was a minor at the time, so it's like, yeah, his dad was beating me, and he hit him with a blender. For one thing, he didn't even, like, set out to kill him. He was just trying to stop him from beating me, so, and the blender's what he had in his hand. So, he would have totally not got in trouble for that, anyway, and I think she kind of knew that, even though she probably didn't. She was worried about him getting in trouble, but that would have been crazy, but she is kind of, but mainly, I think her problem, was she didn't want Norman to know he did that because it was his dad, it's like, she didn't want him to know he killed his own father, because he loved his dad, even though his dad was mean, so, she didn't want him to know that, because, I mean, that would be upsetting, like, not normal upsetting, like, majorly upsetting to him. So she was protecting him from his own mind, which was bad for him in the long run because she was doing it in real life, and he created his own version of her to do that in his own mind, you know. So that's pretty much why that altar was created, you know, because she was like that. He made an altar that did that too. So, and I like how they really, really tried really hard, you know, to do mental illness justice in the situation, because it's hard. It would be hard to be like, how can we make this, like, you know, not make it look like we're being insensitive about mental illness, because this person has a mental illness, but they also kill people, and it's like, it kind of sucks, you know, because it's like, that's a trope that is so often a thing, like, crazy people kill people, and that's not true, and everybody that kills people is crazy, also not true. Crazy and, that's not a good word, but mental illness and being a murderer have no correlation. You know what I mean? There's no correlation between those more than any other thing. You know, like, you could be like, you own a pink car. Well, no, not really, but like, I don't know. Just, it correlates with it as much as any other random thing would. Like, do you own jeans? Are you a murderer? Oh, you're a murderer because you own jeans. Like, that's the correlation. Like, I'm not saying that no person with mental illness is violent, but there's no correlation between them, you know, and that they go together. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not a prerequisite. Or, like, you hear a lot, like, oh, this guy went and shot up a bunch of people, he's crazy. It's like, no, he's just evil, you know, like, that's not a thing. I mean, they might intersect, you know, sometimes, but they're not actually, you know, correlated. You know, there are probably other factors breed into being a murderer more than mental illness. I mean, there definitely are. So, but to make a show that is respectful to mental illness, especially a dissociative disorder, you know, and have the character that has that be a murderer, I couldn't imagine how anybody could ever do a better job than they did, because, you know, his mom said it, which, you know, I'm like, she's trying to defend him, and it's like, he could have got help, you know, and, you know, we all know what's going to happen the whole time we're watching it, you know, we know it's not going to end up okay. You know, we know it's not going to work. But at the same time, it's like, we still feel for him. And we still know that, like, Norman himself, as himself, is not violent. And he doesn't want to do this. Like, he ends up killing, as himself, like, one person. And that's because his alter, Norma, talked him into it. And that was the last guy they replaced Marion with the guy that was cheating with Marion, which I liked. I'm like, heck yeah, like, as I'm watching it, like, I love these writers, they do everything I want them to. But, like, Marion got away, which was awesome, and they killed the cheater, and it's like, that's better. I mean, it's a better option if somebody's, I didn't dislike that they killed off Romero in the last episode, because I love Romero, I was on his side totally, but he was gonna be in such a mess of trouble if he had survived, he would have been in so much trouble anyway, his life would have been ruined. I mean, he escaped from prison, you know, and it's like, he did not care, you know, I wanted him to be happy, but that was never going to happen at that point, you know, it's like, well, now he can be with Norma in heaven, or whatever, you know, it's like, you know, he was finally at rest. You know, like, it's like, okay, well, there was no scenario which he would have a happy ending. Like, if he would have lived. So I'm, like, not mad that they killed him. I would have been mad if they would have killed him before the last episode. But in the last episode, I'm like, okay, then. I wanted him to have a good, happy ending and relief, or something good happened to him, but, you know, it's not going to happen, especially since Norma had to die. So, he was never going to be happy again. So, you know, And Dylan, holy crap, what they put him through. I'm like, this poor boy deserves so much better than this. And when Emma yelled at him, she was like, she said something to him. She's like, you should have stopped him before. And I'm like, he tried. I'm sitting there like crying. I'm like, but he tried so hard. And like, he tried so hard. Don't you understand? He tried everything. I'm like, I was like crying and like being like, please. He tried. He did his best, man. But then Norman invites him, and the way Dylan handled it, because it's like, he loved Norman. That was his brother, and he was so loving. And, Dylan came over there and was like, I just like how they handled it, because it's like, we're not going to take him, and he wanted to be the one, and I love also this. It's like really sad because, like, when Norma, the altar, wanted to kill Dylan, like, Norman took over again and was like, you're not doing it. Like, he stopped her from killing Dylan. And I'm like, oh, that's, like, he's like, not him, not him. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, he really loves his brother, and it's, like, so sad. Which is, like, he killed his mom, and he loved her more than his brother, but at the same time, it's like, he, like, had lost it that night, you know what I mean? He didn't want to live without her. He was trying to kill them both. He wanted them to be peaceful. He wasn't mad at her. It was like, he had a psycho moment, not like that, but like, he had a moment of like, he wanted them to be peaceful. I don't know, he like snapped that night, basically, like, I don't know why he did that, really. I mean, it was just not logical, but, they had to have her killed off because she was dead in the movie, and like, everything that progressed after had to happen, so, and it would be, he loved her too much, you know what I mean? Like, he loved her too much, that's why he killed her, because he wanted them to be together, and the only way to have them together and never be separated again, and it be only them two, was to die together in his mind, basically. He was too obsessed with her, so loving Dylan, but not loving him to the obsessive point that he did his mom, or mother, which that is freaking creepy. It really is, like, but it was sweet that he refused to let his altar kill Dylan, and I was like, oh, like, and then he's like, I have to turn myself in, I can't do this, because he didn't want to ever hurt Dylan, and I'm like, because even he knows that Dylan's the best. He doesn't even have to be in his right mind to know that Dylan is the best, and it's just like, and he knew that Dylan always tried everything to do the right thing. Like, he didn't always do the right thing, but, he tried really hard to do the right thing as much as possible. He was always there for Norman, like, he's always loving, and he wanted him to get better, and it was kind of like it turned into the like, Dylan show right at the end, almost, because he's like, I can't have what I want, because what I want is for you to be well, and I just felt like we have really been watching this all with kind of like, Dylan is our proxy, because he's the most normal in the family, and at the same time, you're like, yeah, Alex wanted to kill Norman, but it's like, we can see it kind of from Dylan's perspective, too. It's like, Alex can't just, like, Alex is really mad at him for killing Norma, but at the same time, you're like, this is not, like, I mean, I understand where Alex is coming from. I don't blame him at all, but I can kind of see Dylan's point, too, because somebody that's not in their right mind at the time that if they do something like that, like, he might not even remember doing that, like, he didn't remember that he did that. He didn't remember that he's the one that did it, he didn't even think she was actually dead, like, that's how out of his mind he was, like, he thought she was really still alive for, like, 2 years, so, and, how do you blame someone in that state, honestly, like, they're not, like, it's sad, because he had no control over it. Like, he wasn't innocent, because he could have helped himself more. Like, he could have tried harder, but it was like, I don't know. There's the humanity there, and like the empathy that he had as himself, and the fact that like when he thought it was his mom killing people, like actually his mom, like before he went to Pineview, like he actually thought, he's like, you can't do this, you have to stop this. And it's like, he didn't want her to kill people, he didn't want people to be dying, he didn't really want to kill his dad, like all this stuff, like he didn't want to do that, like actually. So it's like, he's like, he didn't want other people to kill other people, like he didn't actually want to hurt people, but deep inside he must have, you know what I'm saying? Like he did, because it was deep inside him to want to, but because the altar is still him. But it was like, at the same time, I don't know, there is a humanity there, and it's really hard, because it's like, they had to do it this way. I mean, they had to do it that he was a killer, because then it wouldn't be the show, it would be like, you can't do that. Everybody's expecting him to kill people, obviously. But as far as they could respect mental illness and shine a light on how they are the ones that suffer the most, really, in the situation, unless, the dead people suffered more, probably, but, it's like, they don't have to live with that, and he did, and he wanted to die. So it's like, at the end, when Dylan kills him, he's like, thank you, and I'm like, this is the saddest freaking thing, because it's like, he didn't ask for that mental illness, you know what I mean? Like, he didn't want that mental illness, but at the same time, it was so hard for him to not want, because the reason it was so hard for him to let go and, like, try to get better is because it was his mom that was his altar, so he was obsessed with her, so it's like, he wanted her there, he didn't want to get rid of her, you know what I'm saying, because, of his obsession with her. So it's like, it's not understandable. I mean, I'm not saying like I agree with him or that he should have done that, but it was like, if his altar had been just like a random person like Tyler Durden, like it would have been easier for him to want help. Like, I don't want this random person telling me what to do and doing things without my permission, with my body. If it had been like someone like that, but since it was like his like, he knew it wasn't his mom, and even when he like figured it out, he wouldn't talk to it, like he wouldn't talk to himself, the Norma that he created, because he knew it wasn't, and he's like, you're not hurt, and he wasn't, cool with it, what I mean, like he knew the difference, which is a step in the right direction, it's like, he could have definitely gotten help, but it was like beyond that, it was too late, and like Emma said, you should have, but what really, Dylan really did try, like, she can't blame him, like, nobody can blame him, because he actually tried, like, the hardest of everybody to fix everything, like, all the time, but, I hate to say it's Norma's fault, because she was one of the victims in the situation, but, like, she couldn't see how bad it really was, because she was too close to it, like Dylan told her, and it's like, if only she had known, you know what I'm saying, like, but she wanted to do what he wanted more than she wanted what was best for him, and that's bad, that's bad parenting, obviously, but she saw him acting normal, sort of, and the night that he tried to kill them both, and did kill her, and he wanted to die too, but it's like, they had such a messed up relationship to begin with. She didn't see him as creepy, you know what I mean, because the whole time he was kind of creepy, but she didn't see that. Just like at the beginning, whenever he was calling her mother, and Dylan's like, "Stop with this mother business. It's weird." And I'm like, "Thank you." Honestly, like that in itself would be like, that's weird. Like immediately you would think somebody's weird if they said that way he did. Like it was so proper, and I'm like, that's weird. Which, it's like he was supposed to be creepy. There was times when, he wasn't as creepy. Like all up until like the end of season 4, it was more like he was the victim of his own mind, And after that, it was like, holy crap, he's done lost it completely. There were times when he looked, even as himself, he looked completely evil. And it was not okay. And just like he said to that, I still can't remember that kid's name. That guy he was in the mental institution with, he was like, "You'll never get out of here, but I will." And he's like, "You're not okay. You're in here for a reason." He's like, "Yeah, but unlike you, he said he knew how to trick people into thinking he was normal. So he did this fake crying and stuff to get out of it." And it's like, you start to wonder, and it's like, that is creepy, and it's like chilling, when he says that, because I'm like, holy crap. And you were wondering, like, has he been doing this the whole time? Is this, like, has he been doing this the whole time? But, I don't think he had, but it's just like, that's creepy, like, and that guy was actually, like, he was, like, stunned. He was like, "Oh, man, you're scary." Like, you are worse than I thought. You know what I'm saying? Like, you think he's this innocent, dorky kid, but, man, he's dark. And he's chilling. It was chilling. Which, one thing I have to say about this definitely is Freddie Highmore. Oh, my gosh. For one thing, he's British in real life. The casting department, I can't believe they found this dude. Like, I can't believe it. He's perfect. Like, for this role, for one thing, but, like, and he's so young. So it's like, that acting job was beyond superb. I could not imagine how he even did that. Like, it was just beyond anything I've ever, like, it's just Millie Bobby Brown levels of superb acting. Like, I can't even, like, I don't even know how to start, like, talking about how much talent all that had to take. Like, for one thing, he played 2 characters. You knew that when he switched by his face. Like, he didn't have to say anything. His mannerisms, the way he, imitated Norma's actual mannerisms, and the way she talked, and the way she moved, and the way she had hand gestures, and, he played those 2 characters, and it was just so, and, like, I can't even begin to say, like, and just there's so many different emotions, so many different things that he had to do as an actor. I'm just like, how are you this good at acting? You know what I'm saying? Like, how are you freaking this good at acting? Like, he had to be better at it than most, or, like, the original, not to diss him, but the original guy that played Norman in the movie, in the original, he had to just throw on a wig and kill somebody, and then talk in a girly voice for a minute. And that's what, and in Bates Motel, he didn't change his voice, he didn't, I mean, the way he talked changed, but he didn't change his voice, he was just, because that would have meant, he thought he knew what he was doing, you know what I'm saying? Like, he would have to know that he was pretending to be a woman to raise his voice to a higher pitch, and he didn't, so he wouldn't, and his voice got softer, like a woman's, but he didn't change his voice, he didn't, like, mock a woman's voice when he was being Norma. So it's like, I like that, whoever's idea that was, that was actually wonderful. And also, so you couldn't tell, because it's like, it's just crazy, man. It's just, Freddie Highmore deserves all the awards for that acting, like, and now he's playing a kid that can do surgeries who has autism, and I'm like, of course he is, because he's an amazing actor. Like, he is such a good actor, I can't even, but, yeah, I just like it. It was just, and I thought the show was going to be like really dark and disturbing, but, and it was because I was like, I thought it was something different than it was when I was kind of paying attention, because I'm like, are they incest? Is this, because they would like sleep in the same bed, and like, some of the things were definitely wrong, like, or not, it was kind of like, wait a minute, because Tommy was like, Mom, that guy said I was attracted to you, and I think I am, and she's like, well, that's normal, and I'm like, wait a minute, she sounds like I should, like, believe her, because she's saying it so casually, but no, that's not okay, because she's like, oh, it's fine, because you just noticed. I'm like, wait a minute, no, that's not right, that's not accurate, no, and I'm like, wait a minute, and it's like, you really have to listen to it, because you're like, wait a minute, and you kind of have to question, you're like, it kind of makes you think about stuff, because you're sitting there like, their world seems normal to them, and you're watching it, and you're like, oh, that's normal that they sleep together, but then you're like, is it? You have to question things your own self, like, wait a minute, if this was like another set of people, like, would I feel like this was okay, like, you know what I mean, like, it's like, wait, that's not okay, you know what I'm saying, like, it's just weird, because you just have to really, it's, the way they do it, it's like, oh, well, that's wait, that's not normal, you know what I mean, and it's just, it's really, like, and like I said, I'm so not freaking surprised that the Carlton Cuse created Lost and created this, because that guy's amazing, obviously, because Lost, it explores so much of philosophy and, like, the questioning of personalities and people's, what drives them, what motivates them, all the things that it explores in Lost. And it's like, people are like, I hate that some people are like, so they were dead the whole time? It's like, no, freaking no. Or people were like, so it's about these people and a smoke monster. It's like, I just got really disappointed in the smoke monster. I'm like, it's not about the smoke monster. It's not about the island. This show is about people. It's about characters. It's about, humanity. And the way we interact with each other, and the way we grow and change, and the things we go through. And these people, there's a reason it was called Lost, and Jacob explained it. And it's like, this show is not about just an island where adventures happen. Like, you're missing everything that matters. It's about humanity and the way people treat other people, and so many different things. Like, there's so many different things. It's like, there's a bigger picture in this show, and it's amazing. It's like, even as a Christian, I'm watching it like, holy crap, is this an allegory? It's like, it's not, but it could be taken that way. Like, if you're a Christian watching it, you're like, and there's episodes about, you gotta have faith, and in the end, Jack learns that John was right to have faith, and it's like, it's just cool, you know what I mean? It's just really cool, and I really like the ending, because it's like, honestly, if you think about it, like, shows have to end at some point, but eventually the characters in their universe will eventually die. But it doesn't matter if they do or not, because the show's over now. You know what I'm saying? Like, you like to think they go on and live happy lives. That's the thing. But they were saying goodbye to the characters. I mean, I'm sure they love them just as much as more than everybody else, because I'm a writer. I'm sure they love the characters more than even any audience member. But, like, that was like, this is what's really happening to us. Our characters are gone because the show's over, so they might as well be dead. You know what I'm saying? But at least we know they're all together, and that would be better to me than, like, them all going their separate ways and not talking anymore. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like, oh, now they are all together, and that's really, like, what you really want, even though it's weird to just be like, no, I want them to stay on the island, because that way they're stuck together, because I want them all together all the time, and it's like, that's not realistic, but it's like fantasy fulfillment that they're all, like, together now forever. And it's like, that's a good ending, because it's like, now we can know they're all together, just like the ending of Seinfeld. They are stuck together. They're not going to go off and, like, stop being friends, so it's like the ending of Friends. It's like, they all went their freaking separate ways. How horrible was that? But the ending of this, there was no option for Norman that was good. And, you know, you kind of like that he got kind of what he wanted, and Dylan had to do it. So I'm like, poor Dylan. You know, like, the whole thing is like, poor Dylan. I'm like, just give Dylan something good. And, like, I didn't want him and Emma to like, break up, because, oh my gosh, that'd be awful. Because, like, how much more could he deal with? But then the ending, when they see that they're, you know, still together, I'm like, okay, Dylan and Emma got a happy ending, so that's all I cared about. I mean, it's not all I cared about, but it's like, that's the most I could ever hope for that show, with all the characters and the way things went. Because it's like, Norman's mom had to die, you know, obviously, for the plot. And, you know, after that, Romero could never be happy. Norman really could never be happy after she died, honestly. So, you know, it's either be stuck with his alter version of her, which sucks, you know, and is not the same, or, you know, die, or get rid of it, you know what I'm saying? But there was no options for Romero or Norman, so they had to die, and I'm glad they did. I mean, that sounds mean, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it was really the only option that even gave them some sort of peace, in a way. Like, I was just like, honestly, at this point, when Norman was going after Dylan, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want Dylan to die. And I'm like, just shoot him. Put him out of his misery. You know what I'm saying? Like, not that I wanted him to kill him because I hated him, or like, you know, which I was never on his side, but it's like, I didn't feel like super hatred like I would for like Kilgrave, you know, and Jessica Jones. But I was like, just put him out of his freaking misery, because he's not gonna get better. You know, I'm like, honestly, my thoughts was like, I would do it just because he needs it. You know what I mean? Like, he needs to be put out of his misery, because he's never going to be happy. And if it's between Dylan and Norman, who's, like, never going to be happy and not able to stop killing people, and the only way they're going to stop him is to drug him to where the point where he's a freaking zombie. It's almost like the ending of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, because it's like, if he gets to go, you know, if he even, for one thing, if the cops show up, they're going to kill him. No questions asked. If he turns himself in and they lock him up, he's going to end up in a mental institution, and they're going to drug him up so bad he's just going to be a walking zombie, you know? So, he would end up like Jack Nicholson at the end of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and, you know, that'd be miserable. And he would be miserable if he wasn't drugged up, because his mom's dead, and he has to, like, you know, and he's miserable in his mental illness, you know? So it's like, there was no good option for him. So Dylan had to put him out of his misery, which is like heartbreaking, because he didn't want to, but it's like, it was so sad, you know? It's like, that is so horrible for Dylan, because it's like, even Norman wanted it, you know? He even said thanks, but it's like, you know, Dylan has to live with that, you know? And he has no family anymore. Like, Norman a chick ran over Dylan's dad, which he didn't even find out, that we know of. He'll eventually probably find that out. So it's like, oh, both my parents are dead, and my uncle, which is also my dad, and his mom, which is like crazy. I'm like, is anybody gonna tell Dylan that his mom died? And like, nobody did. And I'm like, how did they not tell him? How did he not? Somebody did they not think? You know what I mean? Like, shouldn't there be records somewhere of the kids she had, and somebody contact him? Whatever. Like, sure, you would think somebody would, like, and especially Romero, you think he would be like, I need to contact Dylan, and we need to do something about Norman, something, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, it's just like, you think he would at least try to get a hold of him, which is, like, so convenient that he's, like, changed his phone number right after, but it's like, surely somebody could contact him somehow. You know, maybe Emma probably didn't change her number. So, I don't know. And Emma was on Facebook, so, and Caleb tracked him down, so it couldn't have been that hard. You know, you would thought somebody in the town would be like, Dylan needs to know that his mom died. Didn't anybody tell him? You know, it's weird that, like, nobody bothered to tell him. But, you know, he had to kill his brother. His mom's dead. His dad / uncle's dead. His stepdad died. It's like, holy crap. It's a good thing he's got Emma and her family, so or Emma and her dad and the baby, Katie. But, which, and it sucks because, like, him and Norma fought the last time they talked. And I knew, like, when I was watching it, because I rewatched the whole thing. Like, I watched it to the end of season 4 before, but then I was like, I gotta rewatch the whole thing. When season 5 came on Netflix, I'm like, I gotta watch it from the beginning, because I didn't really pay attention to the first, like, 3 seasons, so I guess he was up. So I binged the whole thing, and when I saw that, like, when Dylan left the last time, and, you know, he had gotten in a fight with Norma because of which I'd seen her die and all that, I was like, holy crap. I mean, I should have known it was coming, but it was really surprising. Because we got to know her so much, and she was, like, the main character, really. And it's like, wait, this is real. Like, I thought for sure she was going to come out of it. I don't know why I thought that. I guess I didn't know where they were going to end it. And I should have known, because I saw a spoiler online a while back where they said, oh, Rihanna's playing Marion Crane. And I'm like, oh, wow. You know, cool, but it wasn't much of a spoiler, just he was playing her. And I was like, oh, they're going to go to that point. So I should have expected that Norma would die at some point because she's dead in the movie. But I'm like, I don't know why I didn't think of that. It's just like, I don't know. I just didn't expect it for some reason. Even though I should have known it was going to happen. When it happened, I was like, oh yeah, she does have to die at some point. But I'm like, dang it, that's so sad, for one thing, but it's like shocking and like appalling. And I actually kind of liked her, you know? It's like, I mean, Norman's problems had a lot to do with her, and they were a lot because of her. I don't want to say they're her fault, because that implies, like, intention of hers to do that to him, but that was not her intention, obviously. But it's just like, it was her fault in the way that she caused a lot of it, but I mean, mostly was the cause of pretty much all of it, but at the same time, like, we can blame Sam more because he's the one that made her so afraid and so protective, you know what I'm saying? And I mean, there's so much that made her who she was, and that was stuff she didn't have any control over, like her parents being awful, but he had, you know, she went through a lot, and, like, pretty much everything, and, like, just one thing after the other, really, and like I've said, like, her, mental problems were more reactive to her environment, and Norman's were more biological. I think he had a predisposition to be that way because, genetically, even his grandmother was, you know, depressed and had mental problems too, but I think, you know, the situation caused a lot of Norman's problems, but I think his predisposition, like, biologically caused it too. I think it was a mixture because you can go through all the things he went through and not, you know, have that happen. You know what I mean? Like, I think it was environmental and biological. But anyway, because with her it was all about environmental, and she didn't, you know, she didn't have any actual mental disorder. She had a lot of, like, trauma and PTSD and things like that, and she was in denial a lot, but she didn't actually develop an actual serious mental disorder. You know, she was a lot of, and she had, I was really, when she forgave Caleb, well, I don't know if she completely forgave Caleb, but, like, when she went to him, and, you know, he said sorry for raping her and stuff, and she hugged him and was, like, crying with him, I was like, wow, that was powerful, because it's like, you know, I mean, I'm not saying he was okay, you know, that it was okay because he was young, but he was young, and he should have known better, yes, but at the same time, they started doing it together in a way, even though he was too old to be doing, you know, he should have known better, but I'm not excusing him, but the fact that he grew up and then realized how wrong it was, and then apologized, and that was like eating away at his soul. You could actually tell, you know, it was heartbreaking to watch, you know, that happen, because it's like you hardly ever see that version of things play out. And the fact that she did it for Dylan, you know, and she's just like, I had to do it because that's what mothers do, you know, I have to do something I hate to do the most because of Dylan wants me to. And she actually kind of almost repaired the relationship, you know, her and Caleb's. I mean, a lot compared to what it was, but I've been talking for too long and I'm like getting hoarse. So that was my review of the whole thing, and I don't think I have much to say about individual things. I think I've said a lot of pretty much most of what I wanted to say. You know, if you watch it, you know, like all the cool stuff Dylan did, like paying for Emma's thingy and all that stuff. He's just the best. But anyway, yes, that show is good and you should watch it, even if you don't like horror movies, because it's not so much scary. I like that they didn't show much of murder. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't that gory, and they didn't really focus on that side of things as much. So it's not really that scary. It's not really horror. It's like, you know, the murderer, like, that's one of the main characters. So it's like, it's not as scary. It's more like, what the heck, dude? Like, why are you doing this? Like, you want him to get caught, but it's not really scary. It's more, it's kind of a thriller and suspense, definitely, but it's not really scary. And it's just interesting, too, because it does show you, like, when his altar says, my whole purpose of existing is to protect you. That is the actual reason for people's altar personalities, to protect them from things they can't handle mentally, you know. That is the actual purpose. And it's kind of amazing. But in that situation, it turned out bad, but that's fiction, and that's hardly ever the case. So, but that is the actual purpose of people having that disorder, is because, well, the reasons they said in the show, it's actually very clinically accurate, I guess you would say, about all that, the reason for it and what happens and all the things they say like that. It's really good. They did their research, and they tried really hard to be respectful of mental illness, despite the trope that was inevitable for that show. You know, I mean, but they did such a good job of that. Because it's like, how can you be respectful if the person with mental illness is a murderer? But it's like, they really did. I mean, they really did, you know, go the extra mile with that. They really, really, like, did such a good job of, you know, doing that while they didn't have the option of making him completely innocent, you know. As far as the fact that they couldn't make him not a murderer. They did amazing. So, yeah. That's all I have to say.